Hey everybody, welcome in. Before I jump in, I just want to thank everybody for being so gracious and courteous. This has been a rough couple of days in the markets, and I just want to say how proud I am of all the veterans out there. We've all got kicks in the teeth, but just want to thank everybody for holding tight and all the kind messages. We've had a whole bunch of people that became whole coiners over the last 24 to 48 hours, people who wouldn't otherwise be able to do it. So every cloud has a silver lining, and I know it sounds cliche. It's a good time to stack, but it is historically a very good time. We were, what was it, about $800 or $900, I think, off the summertime low, all the way back 10 months ago in July 2021. And we're back there now. But just as I began, Bitcoin's gone up $800 in the last 30 minutes. So maybe it's the good juju from you all. So let's jump in. Let's go through a ton of material, the stuff I see. Today's story is going to be talking about inflation and my estimate of the print for tomorrow. Because if we get a low one, the markets will rally hard, which is good. So channels about math, money, and freedom. And now this is financial advice. So again, Cathie Woods, a little bit. I'm not going to talk about her too much today, but she believes it's the end of the bear market for crypto. Fingers crossed, everybody. And we will look at a bunch of data, as I mentioned, and some estimates around inflation that I see coming based on data sources that I have. So first of all, jumping in, we can see inflation expectations from Charlie Bilello. As we know, 8.1% is expected. It's coming out at 5:30 a.m. Pacific, 8:30 Eastern tomorrow. And I believe, according to his little survey here, people believe it'll be above 8.1%. I would have rewritten the survey more along the lines of below 8.5, 8.1 or below, or above 8.5. That's kind of a better way to phrase the question. But I believe if we have 8.2 or below, the market will rally. And that'll mean we've hit peak inflation. Even though it's a completely contrived and cooked number, the markets will react to it. So let's talk about Truflation. You can see here, per Truflation, which is built on Chainlink, you can see that we are in a clear downtrend. Remember, gravity brings inflation down because it's measured kind of on a periodic basis. And also, folks are not spending right now. A huge part of income people have tied up in stock markets. When stock markets go down, everybody closes that wallet, pocketbook, whatever, purse, handbag, whatever you want to call it as we go forward. So that has definitely taken a big bite out of all the action. Now, when we break down the key year-over-year changes of the key elements of inflation, you'll see here food hovering around 10%. Of course, Truflation is about double the CPI. Housing is kind of at 12%. Transportation is still very high because gas prices are high. I'll talk about them in a second. But other ones, Medicare, education, personal items, are staying pretty much in check, which is good. Now, with the doubling of mortgage rates over the last 120 days and the banks tightening lending, it's really putting a dent in the housing market. So the rental vector, of course, is a separate area, is completely off base, and they measure that twice a year, so I'm not concerned. When you look at the breakdown of the CPI components, and sorry if this is tedious, but we all need to know this because this drives the markets. You can see here, housing is the lion's share at 42.63%. 42.36%, sorry. And I believe that will come down, simmer down a lot as we go forward. So that's good news. Now, the one concern I do have for inflation is this is from Bloomberg. There's pain at the pump, and gasoline futures suggest the rise in petrol gasoline prices could continue. Obviously, it's kind of like, the government increases the federal funds rate by 50 basis points, and banks double the mortgage rate from 2.5% to 5.5%. So kind of like the gas pump as well. They all do that. But there's a lot of distribution costs as well that are taken into account. It's a bit of a spiral. Same thing with food. People don't sometimes realize the impact of the cost of distribution and gas on the price of food as well as you go forward. So this is a concern. But I do believe we'll be under 8.5, hopefully under 8.2, and the markets will rally. I think there's an 80% chance of that. So let's look at this other article from Bloomberg, since we're talking about Bloomberg. And here is a very quick illustration how you can cherry pick numbers. And anybody can do this. So as you can see, this is per November 2021, which coincidentally is the Bitcoin top of the market. And it says Bitcoin is down now 46.2% from November, whereas commodities are up 26.9%, gold up 3.6%, and NASDAQ is down 22.4%. So they like to Bloomberg likes to make fun. But they did say something interesting here, that is, as necessities get pricier, luxuries like crypto get cheaper. Obviously, people go after hard things that they need, but in which to live. So it is an interesting portrayal as we go forward. So bear that in mind, everybody. But they're kind of mocking Bitcoin as a inflation hedge. But Bitcoin is the hardest money. It's one of the reasons I'm here, is to make sure people get that. So here we are. We're going to do the good, the bad, and the ugly as usual. And first of all, a little bit of good news. There was a surprising inflow from CoinShares. The digital asset investment products surprisingly saw inflows last week totaling $40 million. And what believe investors taking advantage of the substantive weakness in price to add to positions. Flows were lopsided. North America at 66 million in. Europe saw 26 million out. So North America was buying the dip or investing in different types of funds. Now Bitcoin saw 45 million come in, which was good. Ethereum continues to lose and drain money. It's kind of shocking at this stage. The week outflow is 12.5 million and year to date is 207 million. And the only positive standalone fund was Solana, the only altcoin to see any measurable inflows, which totaled 1.9 million last week. And I had a lot of questions today regarding Solana. Is it a buy at 65? Well, today it hit 74, but it is volatile. And, we don't know if the market's turning around. This is why the market action tomorrow is dependent on the inflation print. If the inflation print comes out lower than expected, the market will believe the Fed will rail in the interest rate increases, which will make the markets rally. That's why we need to know all this stuff. So let's talk about miners for a second. The miners are hodling. They are not capitulating. They did sell a little bit around the 1st of April, but since then they have not been selling into this dip because they know the price is going up. Everybody knows the price is going up. The odds of the price going down from here versus up are far, far smaller. Now, Jesse Powell from Kraken CEO, he said in an interview he would go all in on Bitcoin at 20K. He already has a lot of Bitcoin, but he'd put all his chips on the table. And he also mentioned, I don't want the headline to be misleading, but he said Bitcoin under 40K is a buy. This is the hardest money that we know. So we'll see what happens. And it was interesting as well when we look at the action yesterday. Once Bitcoin fell under 30K, money came in. And that was despite huge selling pressure from Do Kwon and LFG as well, which I'll talk about in a minute and I talked about yesterday. Let's talk about the bad news. Unfortunately, there's quite a bit of bad news today. First of all, well, this could be construed as good news, but also bad news. This is from the Real Plan C, and he puts together some great stuff. So big thank you, the Real Plan C. But as the price of Bitcoin goes up, the dollar value of the losses goes up. So this is a chart of the amount of Bitcoin lost through capitulation events. Now, a couple of things to highlight here is, first of all, Bitcoin is a lot more stable of an asset than it was in 2012, 2013, 2017, etc., etc. A lot more stable, a lot bigger, a lot larger. And as a result, it doesn't have the same level of capitulation events. So we do expect that trend to go down. Just like the cycles get longer, the capitulation events become less and less. But this was very, very interesting. He stat ranked the top capitulation events with their dates. So we had 952,000 Bitcoin lost over a 10-day period in March 2020, 841,000 in December 2018, 760,000 in Feb 2018. It's like a separate bottom. We had 465,000 in May 2021. That was the summer doldrums, as I call them. 326K in January 2022, just a few months ago, and 291K right now between May 1st and May 10th. So we just went through one, and definitely it was a capitulation event. We saw huge losses over the past 48 hours, $1 billion in liquidations and $500,000 in the last 24 hours. Let's talk a bit about Bitcoin correlation. And this is part of what Kathy Woods is talking about and why she believes the NASDAQ is completely oversold. So does Oppenheimer and a whole bunch of other top analysts. You can see the money coming in, things kind of bottoming out. I know the market still feels fragile and weak, but I mean, things are trading at tremendous values right now. Like Google's trading at a PE under 20. Tesla is growing at over 60% and trading at a PE of 60. It's all crazy. But looking at the correlation here, you can see the correlation to risk assets continue to grow. Bitcoin's 30-day correlation to the NASDAQ reached an all-time high. And Bitcoin has been mirroring the NASDAQ performance throughout 2022, which is not good, as we are in a de-risking environment. Therefore, when people de-risk, they sell everything. So, and Bitcoin has clearly been impacted not only by this correlation, but also by the sell-off from Do Kwon yesterday as well. In other news as well, because when UST bleeds, other stablecoins benefit. We saw the biggest 7-day moving average hit all-time high of deposits into USDC. This pink line here going up and to the right vertical. It's never happened in the history of USDC. And the all-time high was about 412 million, I think, of deposits in a very short window of time. This is people going risk off into a stable coin as they go forward. So let's talk about a lot of stuff that people are very alarmed about. And you have FUD being spread by our friends at Fortune magazine. You think they get the story right, but everyone's saying, oh, MicroStrategy margin call scare. Just as a note, over the last 2 days, you could buy a full Bitcoin for under $20,000 if you used MicroStrategy as a proxy. And I know there's risk, and I know that they could have a margin call. But Michael Saylor came out, and I'll read you his tweet here verbatim. Make sure I don't screw it up. MicroStrategy has $205 million long-term loan that needs to maintain a $410 million as collateral. That's a 50% collateral ratio. And MicroStrategy has 115,109 Bitcoin it can pledge. 15,000 of them are not pledgeable. Using their language, about 14,000, sorry. And if the price of Bitcoin falls below $3,562, the company could post some other collateral. So that's the kind of break even. It's not 21,000 and all the negative perma-bears calling for a $20,000 Bitcoin. I don't see that happening unless something really, really, really bad happens in the world. So I just want to put that to rest, everybody. Don't worry, but you could have bought a full Bitcoin. It takes about 86 shares of MicroStrategy. MicroStrategy is completely oversold. It's trading at like a 55-60% discount. It will rebound. They will obviously take a hit in the quarter, having to write it down in the numbers, but people who understand what MicroStrategy is, they'll get over that. So in the meantime, let's talk about some of the ugly news, and there is some ugly news too. Bitcoin wallets in profit is down to 51.34%. This is from Into the Block. And this is a very high level. When I pulled up the chart today and went through history, the last time it was higher than this, this was basically in March 2020, when, you know, everybody knows what happens at that time, when Bitcoin tanked and went down to $4,000. What a time to buy. And that's 2 years ago, basically. But here, the year-to-date average of addresses that are in the money is about 27.94 million addresses. This doesn't mean all Bitcoins just addresses. Some people have multiple addresses. Some people have addresses that have a very small amount of Bitcoin in them, etc. But that's 63% percentage. Out of the money, 14.65 million addresses average. But looking at the numbers today, 47% are in a loss right now, and 51% are in profit. But remember, that's not representative. There's a lot of people that hold long term, and they have a very, very low price of Bitcoin out there. But that was an interesting stat to see. Let's talk a bit about liquidations. I did mention over $1 billion was liquidated in the last 48 hours. 500 million in the last 24 hours. 110 million of that approximately was from Luna. That's 40 million more than Ethereum, and about 30 million less than Bitcoin, as you can see there. So shocking day in the market. And of course, Luna is, we always knew it was very risky. We didn't think it was going to explode overnight. But again, many believe it was the subject of an attack. Do Kwon is trying to raise $1 billion to rebuild the business. We're not sure if the trust will ever come back. One of the key factors and facets of a stablecoin is having that trust and reputation. Maybe Do Kwon was a little bit too arrogant, too cocky, too confident. Maybe the Citadel group took him down in a very orchestrated attack. That seems to be the case. But here we are. Again, crypto is very, very, very risky. That's why I am 98% in 3 things. And, the rest are all very speculative investments. So let's talk about Extreme Fear is back on the floor from Arcane Research. Extreme Fear, typically, we've only hit this 10 level a handful of times in the last 16 months, 18 months or so. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 times have we been down this low. In fact, January this year we hit it, and this is the sentiment. This is basically lower than the C19 crash in March 2020. I mentioned that infamous date again. And an extremely fearful market, everybody, historically presents a great long-term buying opportunity. And it's often time to pay attention. Smart people out there are becoming whole coiners now because they know they've been waiting for a long time. And the last time the index touched 10, it was, I think, January 8th. We'll see. Bitcoin did fall after January 8th. It fell a little bit more. I think it was over the next 2 weeks, January 24th, when it dipped. But again, it's worth paying attention to the sentiment. When fear is maximum, it's normally a good time to buy. The odds of a higher price in the future is way higher than a lower one. So let's talk about LFG and how it's tied to Luna. The Luna Foundation Guard, Bitcoin reserves reached its initial target of 3 billion after a massive 1.5 billion purchase last week. I mean, the timing of this is uncanny. LFG had 80,394 Bitcoin. You can see from the chart here. Fast forward 5 days later, boom, everything's gone. So there's rumors, like there's different illustrations out there that they still have 28,000 left. I don't know where they are. When I look at the LFG wallet, it shows empty. So they're in turmoil trying to bring the peg back to UST. And one of the things that was super interesting for me was for them to get to $10 billion of Bitcoin and for the Bitcoin price to appreciate as they bought. And then there was copycat players that were going to jump in and do the same thing, build an algorithmic Bitcoin-backed stablecoin. That was interesting, but they never made the journey to completion. They got to 3 billion out of 10 billion, and here we are. So the rest is history. That's all she wrote. Again, crypto is risky, and the speed at which this stuff can disappear is staggering to me. To be able to watch this unfold yesterday live, not only was it kind of stressful, but also perversely kind of fascinating. The speed at which these crypto markets are reacting is staggering, and the speed at which they can be taken down by other firms, interesting. Therefore, go back to square one. Get the pristine asset. Make sure that is the majority of your bag, everybody. Everything else is speculation. Now let's look at the UST Dance. This is the UST dollar peg being challenged. It hit lows of 0.6 on Tuesday, May 10th. And this caused the contagion in the market as the Luna Foundation Guard actively ditched their BTC reserves to save the peg. There were some people that I know that did buy at 62 and 65 and then flipped again at 70, 75, 80. So layering in, layering up. It's a very, very risky strategy, but people do that, including the people that shorted UST in the first place. So they were in it too. So it's a little bit of a V-side correction. Last time I checked, I think the peg is about 90, 92 cents. So we'll see. But the Luna chart is a disaster. Now let's look at the biggest TVL, total value locked drop in history. Again, the speed at which these markets react is staggering. Luna TVL nearly evaporated in what we call the biggest drop in TVL DeFi history. And the total market TVL drop is nearly tied for the worst in history. But you can see here the Luna, which is 77%, it was 77% anchor dominated, probably a lot higher, dropped from 23 billion to 8 billion in a matter of hours, which again, staggering to see. Now, it's funny, I'm not the only one being trolled by Charles Hoskinson. And as I always emphasize, we're all in this together, everybody. There should be no enemies and people can have joyful fun. But, vitriol and hate and contempt and everything else, they should be careful. But to see these two guys poking at each other was kind of funny. Kwon said, I think Charles said first. I don't know who said first, but should I buy some Luna for negative correlation? And then Kwon said, maybe we should buy ADA for negative correlation. I don't know who said it first, but I just thought it was interesting. Glad to see I'm not the only one trolled by Charles Hoskinson. Anyway, love to everybody. So let's look at a couple of charts. Times like this, you have to laugh. So let's look at Bitcoin dominance, Bitcoin, S&P 500, and Tron. And there's a reason we're looking at Tron, actually. In fact, there's two reasons. So Bitcoin, we were looking at the dominance last week. it was pretty much where it is right now. So it's bouncing between the floor and the roof. The floor is 39.5 and the roof is about 47%. So once Bitcoin dominance goes really, really high, that's typically the time that you flip into alts. Some of the alts are holding up quite well. Some are getting absolutely smashed, like Luna. Big loss in market cap. So if you look here, this is a crypto market cap. Last week it was nearly 1.7 trillion, 1.68 to be precise. Now it's 1.39 trillion. That is a big chunk of change, ladies and gentlemen. $300 billion. Poomph. Just like the assets in the Luna Foundation Guard. Again, the speed at which this market moves is kind of staggering. Frightening and also very impressive all at the same time. Now, there is one smart contract platform that's up year to date, and that is Tron. Tron is up 2% year to date. And a big thank you to Sanjay for bringing this to my attention. So it is also, some people call it the top copycat chain, and they plan to copy almost verbatim the same strategy that UST did with their algorithmic stablecoin. Tron want to set up the same thing like Anchor, 20% APY or even higher, I think, to grab all the attention and build their platform. And that could be part of the reason why this is up so much. But when it comes to our smart contract platform profiler, Tron score 14 out of the top 20 platforms. So not something we've ever invested in or really talk much about, but it's interesting to see the relative strength of this machine out there. Now, this is the news regarding their launch of the USDD. There is their US decentralized dollar, which I think is a pretty cool name. The dream, one of the dreams I have or had, was to have a decentralized stablecoin that would power the internet and power all of crypto and everything else. But we're not there yet, and algorithmic stablecoins are extremely risky. As you see what happens when they lose their peg, game over. So they are launching their USDD, which is exactly the same as UST. And I think after what happened to UST, I don't think there'll be a lot of confidence in this. That's why I think USDC and Tether will remain now the strongest. The odds, I did say one of my projections for 2022 is the fact that UST could potentially match USDC, but it looks like that gambit is off the table. Now, S&P 500, top 500 stocks in the US, and some of the biggest companies in the world, is stubbornly hanging on to that 4K level. 4K is the level that many investors had pegged as the time to come in and buy. Go risk off and then come back in and enter the market at 4,000. It's hanging around there. There is some buying happening. There are bids coming into the market, which is good. And finally, Coinbase. We talked about this a couple of times about how we expected them to have a terrible, terrible 2022, but it looks like it's coming to fruition. Coinbase shares plunged after the company missed Q1 revenue. They had a $430 million loss, I think it was, and analyst predictions in terms of both profit and revenue for Q1 of 2022 completely missed. Now, the company disclosed that it has pulled in about 1.17 billion in revenue, well short of 2.5 billion in Q4, and way below the analyst expectations. I think is around 1.5 billion. And now it is 85% off the all-time high. I wonder, is Cathie Wood still buying this stock? Because she's been buying all the way down, and I don't think this thing will turn around. I think people are going to move to DEXs, so is my theory, and there's too much insider selling as well. Insiders have been dumping ever since the day of the IPO. So with that, everybody, big thank you for being here. Be strong. You know what to do. Like, subscribe, and all that stuff. I don't ask for much, but hang in there. Hopefully, I'll be up tomorrow, and hopefully you have a nice report on inflation. So fingers crossed for something as close to 8% as possible. Okay, good night, everybody. Thank you all for being here, and thank you to the mods in the chat and everybody who is a cool part of this community. See you later.